Okay, everyone, welcome to Health and Wealth. This is a RichnerLIVE event, and as everyone's logging on, we'll sit here and smile, and I will tell you what's going to happen. Thanks again to everyone for joining us, and good afternoon. Welcome to Herald Community Newspapers RichnerLIVE events, the events division of the newspaper group. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see all of us at once here on the panel. My name is Sky, and my role is host and moderator of our online discussions. If you've participated in our Health and Wealth event last year, you'll recall it was live and in person. Now in our new normal, we're hosting a series of virtual events like this one, as well as our weekly webinar series, Herald Inside LI, which you can read more about and sign up for future webinars and events on our website, which is liherald.com/insideli. I must give a plug to next week's 2 episodes. On Tuesday evening, we'll be talking about breast cancer. And Wednesday morning, we'll have Nassau County Executive Laura Curran joining us on Herald Inside LI. And again, the website to register is liherald.com/insideli. Today's Health and Wealth virtual event is sponsored by Cassena Care, Comprehensive Audiology, Ronald Fatoullah and Associates, and UnitedHealthcare. All registrants for this event who are Medicare and Medicare Advantage plan holders are eligible for a free blood pressure machine, weight scale, and glucometer if medically necessary as part of a new Medicare initiative. All you have to do is call 1-800-GET-WELL. This information will be sent in the follow-up email after this event. We'll also have some prizes we'll be giving away throughout the course of this event, so stay tuned to see if you're one of today's lucky winners. Before I introduce today's panelists and walk you through the agenda for the next hour, we'd like to begin today's session with a 3-minute meditative breathing exercise led by Ash Straw of the Flow and Restore Collective. So Ash, please take it away.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So I'm going to lead us through a deep breathing exercise and a meditation practice. So we are really living in unusual times. And what we're seeing as holistic wellness providers is that in hospitals today, patients with existing meditation and deep breathing practices who contract the coronavirus actually have a higher chance of beating the virus. In addition to the muscles that support us in respiration being stronger, deep breathing practices condition our body to make the most of the air around us. And meditation allows us to keep calm in stressful situations. Today, we're going to try one of those practices together. And in doing so, we're going to allow ourselves to become more present, calm, and aware in order to get the most from today's events. So the practice we're going to do is called extended exhalation. In your seat, come to sit forward on your chair. So actually bring your back away from the chair back behind you. Close your eyes and allow your posture to be upright but natural. Feel your spine is long and the muscles around your spine can relax. Right away here, bring the attention to the breath. Feel the air moving in and out of your body. See if you can just breathe. Just notice the breath without controlling anything about your breath. If you find that's really difficult to do, that's very normal. But as best as you can, see if you can let go of controlling your breath. Just allow yourself to breathe. Now, at the end of your next exhale, see if you can press even more air out of your body. Allow your next inhale to be totally normal and continue to breathe in this way. So when you feel like you've finished your exhale, continue to breathe out a little bit more. Typically, when we breathe, we don't expel all of the air that's in our lungs on our exhales. As you continue to do this, your inhalation may naturally be much deeper, but you don't need to alter anything about it. Just allow it to come in however it does. Take a couple more breaths this way. And then release that practice. Start to breathe naturally and normally again, noticing the impact of that breath on your system. Notice if you feel more calm now than you did before. And you can start to open your eyes. Thank you so much. At the end of today's panel, I'll close this out with some movement. Enjoy.
Thank you, Ash, for that. Now that we all are in the right mindset and peaceful, we can begin today's webinar. Before I introduce the panelists, I'll walk you through an agenda of our experts here. And so the way it's going to go is I'm going to facilitate discussion for about 45 minutes, and then I'll take some Q&A from our audience. So please use the chat feature to type in your questions, everyone who's watching, and I'll ask them at the end. Then Ash will reappear and guide us through a few minutes of stretching to conclude our health and wealth session. This whole event is recorded, and we'll be sending around a link to watch the video at the conclusion of today's session. Without further ado, please allow me to introduce the panel. We have George Zaharioudakis, a physical therapist by trade who is VP of Rehab Operations at Cassena Care, where he oversees 40 skilled nursing facilities. We have Josiane Peluso, Director of Medicare Sales and Marketing for UnitedHealthcare, where she's worked for 10 years overseeing New York City and Long Island. We have Dr. Esther Fogel, audiologist, owner and director of Comprehensive Audiology in Lynbrook, where she specializes in diagnostic audiological evaluations, hearing aid fittings, and more. We have Rob Harper, partner at Farrell Fritz, where he concentrates on trust and estate-related litigation. He's also the chair of the Trust and Estate section of the New York State Bar Association. And we have attorney Ron Fatoullah of Ronald Fatoullah and Associates, a top elder law attorney with offices in New York City and Long Island. Thanks everyone for joining our panel and our attendees. And as we begin our discussion, please feel free, panel, to chime into what the other panelists are saying. Coming from each of your respective industries adds color to the conversation so we can act like we're at a luncheon together in person. I'd like to hear from each of you as to how COVID impacted you, your job, and your clients. George, let's begin with you, as nursing homes were top of mind, especially at the beginning of the pandemic.
Sure. You know, COVID obviously affected all of us, but nursing homes did have a great impact, you know, especially being geriatric in population, our most vulnerable population. So particularly in New York, where things exploded quite rapidly, we really had to face some very large challenges to overcome. You know, the first thing being just room and how do we care, you know, for the patients, you know, that were coming in. Will the hospitals be overflowed? You know, we set up some additional hospital areas, and then, you know, nursing homes being another medical institution that had the ability to care for COVID positive patients. So it became, you know, quite challenging. How do we tackle infection control? How do we tackle isolation, you know, and keeping everybody apart from each other? How do we look at discharges and admissions and you know, just a balance of everything? Personal protective equipment was a huge issue, really in the beginning of the pandemic, where there was just such a large need for it. And we just, as a country, we just weren't prepared, you know, for a pandemic of this size. So it really took a lot of coordination, a lot of communication, a lot of people in the communities that really stepped up to come up with some innovative ideas to solve these problems. So it really was scary, challenging, but here we are in October now, in a much different view, really, in a much different scenario. Although we are still dealing with COVID, I think the handle that we have on it, particularly as a state, has just greatly improved.
Right, because as the regulations changed, the industry was able to adapt. And I think with Dr. Fogel talking about patients that have hearing disability, they had to adapt to using the computer and their other senses. So how was that in your industry?
Would you like me to respond to that,
Yes.
Sky? Okay, how are you? So during the stay at home and quarantine mandates, which for some of us still continue today, obviously we all feel pretty isolated from our family, from our friends. And for those with hearing loss, they're more at risk for isolation, for social isolation. Someone with hearing loss may have difficulty having a conversation on the phone with their friends or with their family, and they can feel even more isolated during this time. So the other thing is, if somebody has a new hearing loss or has an issue with their hearing aids and couldn't get to the doctor's office, that was hard. Another thing is when people wear masks. So even when we could go outside, and if you're going grocery shopping or to the pharmacy and the person on the other side of the counter is wearing a mask, it's for someone with a hearing loss that can be difficult to understand. The mask tends to muffle some of the speech cues. We don't get visual cues. If someone has a hearing loss, they rely a lot on lip reading. That makes it very difficult for them. So we have a lot of suggestions for our patients and accommodations. So if you're stuck at home and you want to communicate with your friends and family, we do recommend using some sort of video. It can be simple, like FaceTime or Zoom on a simple level. Being able to see a person's face when you're talking to them, even through FaceTime, makes it easier to have a conversation. We also offer captioning phones for all of our patients. Those are actually free to any individual with hearing loss, and that's something we can order for you. That's paid for by the federal government. And we're offering for individuals who are not willing yet to come into the office, we're doing some telehealth video consultations. We can do some sort of hearing screening that way. It may not be a full test, but we can do parts of the consultation on video. We're offering drop-off and pickup services. If you have any problems with your hearing aids, they need to be cleaned or checked. We are offering that. Many new hearing aids now also can are enabled with Bluetooth, and you can connect them to your phone or iPad with an app, a very simple app where we can actually remote into your hearing aids while you're sitting in the comfort of your own home and make some programming adjustments. So whatever the situation, whether you're willing to come into the office, we obviously have safety precautions, or if you're in your own home, we do have some options for you.
So seeing clients and patients has changed in all of your different industries. It's very different. So what about with our attorneys? I know that some of the laws change with Cuomo and his executive order to adapt the way that we do things, with the courts being closed and being able to execute wills and stuff like that. So Rob, do you want to tell us about how your industry changed during this time?
Sure, Sky. It's remarkable. Options that one never would have thought would be available a couple months ago are now readily being considered in our field. So from an estate planning perspective, as you mentioned, the governor has issued executive orders that have allowed for remote execution of wills, of estate planning instruments, and have allowed for remote notarization of documents. These are not permanent changes to the law, they're just temporary in the executive orders, but one would have to think that the cat's out of the bag, if you will, and that when the pandemic subsides, when these executive orders go out of play, if you will, the legislature will act in some respects. How far they act, how much they authorize remote execution of instruments and remote notarization of documents, it remains to be seen. But certainly these are noteworthy changes that are on the cutting edge and have allowed for clients to avoid meeting with their attorneys in person and yet still receiving services from their attorneys and handling their estate affairs and other related affairs. And on the litigation side of things, you know, the courts essentially shut down in March and were closed for a good portion of April. They started to open up by accepting papers in May, and then in June, certain courthouses opened to the public. They're still not fully open to the public in the way that they were pre-pandemic, but what we're seeing are courts and attorneys adapt. So there are virtual conferences going on via Skype and Microsoft Teams now. In May, I had to argue an appeal before the first department in Manhattan, and I didn't have to take the train in, and I think I was on the golf course about 10 minutes after that oral argument ended, which is a noteworthy change that one never would have anticipated, even just 7-8 months ago. So the law is adapting. We're doing it in a way that's beneficial to clients and allowing lawyers to still represent clients while at the same time being mindful of the circumstances we're in now.
And Ron, what about in your practice as an attorney as well, dealing with some of the similar issues and with elder law specifically?
Yeah, well, many of the same issues, but I do want to address some things personally. You know, we've all been affected by this, and unfortunately, I had a receptionist who worked for me for 18 years who passed away from the virus, and unfortunately, her husband also passed away from the virus. Her daughter still works for me, so this was a huge blow to my firm. So that's number one. And another personal hit was my brother passed away about 2 months ago, but I believe he would still be alive if he got the care he needed in March and April when he, you know, they told him not to come into the hospital. So, you know, this virus has affected all of us. It has affected my firm, you know, and me personally. So it's something that I know we all have to, you know, get over and just, I don't know, you know, it's been tough in that respect. Professionally, pretty much the same. I mean, you know, as an elder law attorney, we do need to get wills signed, trusts, those, especially those Medicaid trusts, which can be executed, in other words, signed, notarized, and witnessed remotely and virtually. Same thing with Rob, and Rob's firm is just a terrific estate planning firm. And, you know, so you guys could sign all of these documents, including we draft special elder law powers of attorneys that are expanded with a statutory gifts rider and a healthcare proxy. And all of these documents can be signed, including that Medicaid trust, virtually and in the comfort of your living room, you know, alone, even witnessed. And our Medicaid planning practice, which is a huge part of our practice, we do Medicaid applications and Medicaid planning. A lot of the laws have changed to make things a bit easier. We're, believe it or not, we're getting approvals within record time at this point. The last Medicaid application we submitted, we got a firm full approval within 10 days. So that's amazing. So, you know, in certain circumstances, the virus, the new normal has helped, but, you know, certainly I wish we could roll back the clocks and redo some of the ways what we did things.
Right. And I'm sorry to hear about the losses that you've experienced. And I'm sure that all of us have been touched by this virus in different ways.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Scott.
Josiane, were you going to say something? I know that you work with UnitedHealthcare, and from the Medicare perspective, I know Ron touched on the Medicaid perspective.
And just to build upon, Sky, what Ron was saying regarding Medicaid, one of the things the state mandated was suspending Medicaid beneficiaries from losing their Medicaid status, their coverage due to not recertifying. Recertification process is something a Medicaid beneficiary has to do every year to determine if they're still eligible for the benefit. And the state has suspended that in the temporary interim, but still in suspension, so that people are not losing coverage. In addition to that, from a Medicaid perspective, for someone who's working a regular job and needs coverage, lost their job or furloughed or just permanently laid off, a lot of people more coming onto the Medicaid system because of the loss of employment. So there's definitely an uptick of beneficiaries qualifying for Medicaid, but under 65 not qualifying for Medicare. So that's definitely more people going onto the Medicaid system. And staying on the system due to not having to recertify in the interim. And then as far as Medicare, there's a lot of changes that came down the pike in general across all Medicare Advantage organizations or companies. For one, testing for COVID, having all testing related services, having cost share being waived for beneficiaries who are all enrolled in Medicare, whether you're Medicare Advantage or just fee for service Medicare, which is huge because a lot of folks on Medicare are on limited income. And services relating to, COVID related services specifically is where they limited the cost share amounts and the copays. Was unknown how, if I'm in the hospital, how long do I have to be there? What kind of medications do I need to take? And all that adds up very quickly for a Medicare beneficiary. So that was definitely a relief, and I'm really happy to see that we responded so quickly with being able to implement that. In addition to that, from a UnitedHealthcare perspective, just leveraging the technology that we have and then our organization building upon that very agilely, like very quickly. So one, we already have through OptumRx 90-day refill programs for medications for our beneficiaries. So, increasing the awareness for our members to know you no longer have to go into the community, go to your local retail pharmacy to fill your medications for 30 days. We can send it to your home, correspond with your provider, and get you those medications in a timely manner, even when you're running low. So having, being able to promote that benefit to our members was a huge advantage to us. How we enroll people is changing. Tomorrow officially starts annual election period, what we call AEP. For Medicare beneficiaries, they get to choose or either choose to stay with their health plan or choose another health plan that takes effect the first of the following year. So you'll see, many people will see across commercials, radio, digital now, a promotion of different health plans that are players in the Medicare Advantage space, promoting the benefits they offer in those service areas. So we had to adapt how we service it. How are we able to bring the information to enroll beneficiaries? Typically, people would come to community meetings, sit down, do compare shopping sheets, and determine what plan best fits their needs financially and medically. What we've been able to do is launch Zoom, similar to this platform, to be able to reach people in the community in the comfort of their own home, with agents that speak their language, that they're comfortable with, being educated on what options are available to them. Second to that, we've had DocuSign remote signature, probably similar to some of the attorneys using those features where, the exchange of confidential secure documents go back and forth between a beneficiary and an organization to be executed to say, okay, I've officially agreed to these terms by signing. So we've been able to increase the usage of our DocuSign feature and get agents trained in the community on how to, use that how to use that technology. And then we recently launched it in Spanish. So being able to have those, especially in New York City, where we serve such diverse linguistic communities, we got to be able to connect to people and give them the information that they need in their language. In addition to that, we've launched voice signature. So for people that don't, like our lower income or dual special needs beneficiaries who are Medicaid and also on Medicare, they may not have the internet to access something like that or a smartphone. So what we've been able to do to connect with them is be able to call them and they authorize verbally that they're agreeing to the terms, and we have that voice signature. And that's separate and aside those different platforms to our telesales, you know, just our call center team that's able to across the whole nation serve beneficiaries and tell them their options based on their service areas. And then lastly, you know, from an isolation perspective, a couple of, I believe it was the audiologist, maybe Dr. Esther Fogel, who talked about isolation and people not being able to connect and how that really impacts our Medicare beneficiaries the most. Having Ashley as a partner for us at UnitedHealthcare, we've worked extensively with her in the communities to bring the services that she's bringing here today into the communities, but we've also been able to partner with her and connect her to other community partners to say, UnitedHealthcare will sponsor with a community-based organization, you know, chair yoga and do it in a digital way. So it's been interesting, and it's definitely been rewarding to adapt to this new normal, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, with a company like UnitedHealthcare, I could see there's a lot of different change, and you said you're able to change things right away. And I would imagine perhaps with smaller practices, it's more difficult to think of how you can provide solutions to some of your clients and to your patients.
Right.
So we have a question. Oh, okay. Yes. So, I mean, we can dive more into the legal side, because something that comes to my mind is with all these changes, you know, on the legal side, how can you adapt and advance for your clients when you're thinking of all these different types of changes and the way that telemedicine is taking over, right? Like people can see doctors from home. Maybe you're more efficient. You're seeing a lot more patients a lot more quickly from home than you would in person. So whoever wants to jump in, we can hear from the patient perspective or from the legal perspective about those adaptations.
Well, Sky, I'm happy to start. I mean, since March, we've been doing as many consultations as we can through Zoom or any other FaceTime, even whatever someone feels comfortable with. Even our older clients, you know, as elder law attorneys, our clients range anywhere from in their 40s, 50s. We had one client a couple of years ago who was 107. But we're doing Zoom, you know, we're doing these Zoom meetings, and it's wonderful. And again, we could sign everything through Zoom or on FaceTime, sign, notarize, and have everything witnessed. So it does make it much more useful. Even if a client is in a facility, they don't have to leave the facility. We can get this all done virtually, and that's been huge. You know, so we just basically didn't have to wonder about that. There have also been some changes to the Medicaid laws, which just came about. These changes occurred, or were negotiated, I should say, before COVID, but they came into law when the governor signed the budget early April, right after COVID hit. So there's like a 1-2 punch, which is that now we're dealing with a 30-month look back on asset transfers starting just 2 weeks ago, starting October 1 for Medicaid home care applications, Medicaid applications, in starting January 1. So that's huge. And the way that we're maneuvering this is very different. We were working like dogs until the end of September to make sure we could accommodate so many people who wanted to do transfers, but the game's not over yet. I mean, the fact is there's still only a 2.5-year look back for Medicaid home care, and the faster anyone plans and funds a trust now, that 2.5-year look back, that 30 months can start and end sooner. So it's just been a whirlwind as far as we're concerned as attorneys, and how we do things are just so totally different.
Right. Now, with those changes to Medicaid that you mentioned, how can seniors best protect themselves moving forward?
Well, what they can do is just basically do the planning now. Since we, in an era right now, as of October 1, an era of a Medicaid look back, even for home care. We never had one, but right now, any transfers starting again as of October 1 will trigger a look back that's going to be phased in. It'll be up to 30 months for applications starting January 1. So what could they do now? Do the planning now. Get that 2.5-year look back over with, and then they'll be done for Medicaid home care. If someone can use Medicaid, but they're just holding off, do not hold off. Do not hold off, because applications that are submitted now prior to January 1 will not incur the look back. There's 129 pages of regulations on this that are proposed, and still in the comment phase, and we're negotiating. So a lot is up in the air, but there will be a new regime on Medicaid in the future. It's going to be more difficult to get hours, I believe. So advocacy is going to be needed, but if anyone needs care and you're just holding off, don't hold off. Put in that application now. And again, my firm can help you with that. We have a tremendous Medicaid application department to the firm, which we've had in existence for about 40 years.
And I know, Ron, your firm was generous to contribute a prize to be distributed to one of today's lucky attendees, and that's for a 1-hour complimentary consultation with your firm. And the winner of that is Doris Padover from East Meadow. Doris, you won the 1-hour consultation with Ron Fatoullah. Yay.
All right, Doris, we're looking forward to seeing you.
So, Rob, also from the legal perspective, talking about planning, what other types of planning should people do now, in light of COVID and in light of maybe with the election pending, if any of these laws are going to change?
Yeah, I don't know that it's COVID specific, but Sky, you mentioned the election. And for people that have estate tax considerations and concerns, that type of planning is worth looking into at the moment as well. Right now on the federal side, we have exemption amounts, estate tax exemption amounts that are higher than they have ever been before. For an individual, it's $11 million. So to the extent that one has a concern about that being assets being part of their estate, then depending on how the election turns out, the estate tax exemption amount might be reduced next year, and one can reap a benefit from engaging in that planning this year. And I do just want to, if I can, piggyback off of something that Ron said, which is efficiencies. Whether it's on the estate tax or in planning side or on the litigation side, COVID has resulted in efficiencies. So with court conferences now being done virtually, clients have the benefit of not having their lawyers travel out to courthouses. Instead, in many instances, we're logging onto our computers from our desks. Clients are saving travel time. I think that results in some efficiencies that otherwise weren't present before the pandemic arrived. So pluses and minuses to where we're at, but certainly on the estate tax side, there's some good incentive to act now. On the litigation side, there potentially are benefits.
So,
yeah, Rob, I'm hearing that the rate might go down as low as $3.5 million per individual if there's a Biden win. What's your take on that?
Well, fortunately, Ron, your guess and my guess, they're as good as each other's guesses, right? I have heard that amount thrown out in terms of an estate tax exemption amount on the federal side if there were to be a Biden victory. Obviously, we don't know precisely what will happen right now, but if you're an individual that's in that group that would benefit from having an $11 million plus estate tax exemption amount, there are planning techniques that one can follow now to get those assets, if you will, out of your taxable estate that in just 3 months may not be available, and the estate tax can be expensive for your survivors down the road, as you well know.
So now, George, if someone in one of your facilities has questions about this, I mean, it's very confusing for people who don't fully, if you're not a lawyer, I mean, or maybe working in health insurance, or if you're a doctor filling out some of this paperwork, I can't imagine that the average person knows what is going on and who to call first. So, George, how do you help some of your clients and patients in this position?
Sure. I mean, ultimately, we have a whole business department throughout our organization that anytime somebody needs help with Medicare, Medicaid applications, whatever it may be, they're there to assist them, to guide them through, to point them to an elder attorney, if needed. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's a whole department, dedicated to really helping out our patients to do just that.
And Dr.
And George, oh, sorry. Thank you so much. I mean, we've gotten many referrals from your facilities, and we work closely with you guys, and thank you so much. I think you guys are really terrific. Thanks.
And I was going to say, Dr. Fogel, what about with some of your patients? And I'm thinking of now the commercial that you see on TV sometimes where someone's getting mad at an older person because they can't hear. So what do you talk about with some of your patients that come to some of these crossroads that we're talking about?
So during COVID, I mean, you asked in terms of being how we had to adapt to the situation. So like I mentioned before, obviously we all went into lockdown pretty quickly and had to adapt to meet our patients' needs. So while the patients couldn't come into the office, we were doing a lot of pickups, drop-offs, shipping things to the patient's home, quickly adapting in the field of audiology and in all of medicine to some more telehealth and remote appointments. Some of the other panelists spoke about being more efficient, being more convenient. So for our patients as well, although, nothing really can take the place of an in-person appointment, but for some people, some of our patients who rely on maybe getting a ride, a family member driving them, or maybe they have a work schedule, being able to move some of our appointments remotely has been convenient. We can make some adjustments to their hearing aids through, like I said, an app, or have a remote consultation, making it more time efficient and more convenient if someone really can't get out of the house to get to the office.
Now, what are some of the signs that you're beginning to lose your hearing? Especially now, I can imagine maybe it's more difficult, especially if you're home alone. How do you realize that maybe you're not hearing as well?
Sure. So some of the signs to look for, difficulty hearing or understanding during a conversation, either in person or on the phone, maybe difficulty hearing the TV as we're watching the news now, hearing some high-pitched voices, soft and high-pitched voices, maybe your kids and grandkids, you're having a hard time hearing them. There are some other signs that you may not know are related to hearing loss. Maybe if you're hearing some ringing in your ears, feeling some fullness in your ears, experiencing some vertigo, that can be early signs of hearing loss. Especially now while people are wearing masks, if you're having a hard time hearing them more than other people, that may be some signs of early hearing loss. If you feel like other people are mumbling or speaking softly, it may be the other person is mumbling. It may be you're starting to experience some hearing loss. And the most common complaint that I hear from people is, I could hear what you're saying, but I can't really understand what you're saying. So if you're feeling that, that's a good sign to come in or to call us for a consultation.
Esther, can I comment? I mean, I've heard that, I'm just curious to know that hearing loss can actually lead, or is some causal relationship to Alzheimer's or dementia. Is that true?
So while we can't prove a causal relationship at this point, but there is a lot of research out there on the relationship between hearing loss, specifically untreated hearing loss, and cognitive decline. So we do see a positive correlation there. And there are different theories about why that would be. Firstly, as with any of our senses, whether it's hearing, vision, if there's any sort of deprivation, then we don't get the cognitive input that we need, and that can affect cognitive function. The other theory is that that someone with hearing loss has to exert a lot of effort and brain power just to hear what people are saying, and it adds to the cognitive load. So it's hard. A lot of the brain resources are being used just to hear, and that causes some cognitive decline in other areas. So yes, there is a relationship between hearing loss and cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's, and there's also been research showing that people who treat their hearing loss earlier tend to slow down that cognitive decline.
Now, I want to turn our attention to some of the questions that have been submitted. And one of these questions is about trusts. Our attendees are interested in finding more about trusts and how they work. Can you give us a basic primer on trusts and why they are so important? And I'll ask Rob, but I know Ron can chime in as well.
Sure. So a trust is essentially a fiduciary relationship, right? In the sense that you entrust, a grantor entrusts somebody to manage property for the benefit of other people. One of the benefits from a COVID-19 perspective of having a trust, and there are many different types of trusts. They can be revocable trusts that can be revoked or amended by the grantor up until the grantor's death, the grantor being the person that creates the trust. There are irrevocable trusts that Ron is in a much better position than I am to discuss, Medicaid trusts, and there are tax planning trusts that sometimes grantors create. But one of the benefits of having a trust from a COVID-19 perspective is that, in March and April, when it was difficult to have wills admitted to probate because the courts were struggling with this pandemic, just like all of us were, having a trust and assets in a trust allowed for the assets to be administered, even if the grantor passed away, without having to go to court to have a will admitted to probate. A will being a document that only has effect when a court gives its blessing to it. That's a critical distinction between a trust that doesn't require a judge's signature in order to be valid, and a will that only takes effect upon a judge approving it. So, Ron, do you have any other thoughts on why a trust is valuable?
Lots, but that was terrific. So you had mentioned irrevocable trust, which, for Medicaid purposes, that trust would be irrevocable. Because if the trust were revocable, Medicaid would say, well, you could control it to a T, in all ways, and therefore we're going to say it's deemed to be your asset. So for our Medicaid trust, they are irrevocable. However, they can be revoked. Under 7-1.9 of the state's powers and trust law, they can be revoked, but you got to be careful about how you do it. Etc. So the Medicaid trusts are irrevocable, but we are able to get assets out for Medicaid. And the big issue, with doing these trusts as opposed to an outright transfer is that when the assets are out for Medicaid in that Medicaid trust, for example, if the home is held by that trust or brokerage account, upon death, they're out for Medicaid, but they're not out for capital gains tax purposes. So we get a basis step up if we draft that trust right upon death. So since my clients tend to be older for the most part, but if mom bought a home, let's say 40 years ago for $20,000, now it's worth $1 million, we transfer that home into the trust upon her death. If the home is valued at $1 million upon her death, the new basis for capital gains tax purposes would be $1 million. There's a basis step up. If that home were simply transferred to the children outright, like some people do without thinking about it, there would be a carryover basis You have to be very careful. It's not just getting the asset out and starting that Medicaid waiting period. There are lots of other factors such as taxes that must be taken into consideration.
Thank you. I have a question coming in about fall prevention, and George, maybe you could answer about how you are working with some of your patients on fall prevention, and is that something that you can do virtually as well?
Sure, absolutely. Fall prevention is a huge issue, especially in the elderly population, and something that we actually do virtually. For our clients before they go home, we'll typically coordinate with the family and do some sort of FaceTime or Skype call and walk through the home with the patients. We go through a checklist of things to look at and make sure that we can address to try and make the home safer. Some general tips are things like lighting, to make sure there's sufficient light, that there's reduced clutter. Area rugs are a big tripping hazard, if they're unsecured. Grab bars, within the shower, potentially a shower chair, depending on the person's, abilities. Little things like the stairs. Is there a rail? Is it on the left side? Is it on the right side? Sometimes you need to put a chair towards the top of the stairs because people are just exhausted, when they get up those stairs. So it's, little things like that. Sometimes, just orientation, like around the kitchen. Where are the plates located? Where are the cups located? How does it all play out? So you create a flow and make it as functional and as efficient as possible.
I'm just curious. Oh, sorry. Just curious. I mean, I don't know, George or anyone else. Are there certain exercises for balance that could be done by individuals to help them to prevent falls?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's many. Most of them would be standing type exercises, things like, making sure that you have something safe to grab onto, because when you challenge your balance, right, you're putting yourself at a risk for a fall. So you want some sort of fall safe to grab onto or prevent that. But little things like standing on an uneven surface, right, or a cushioned surface. Like you think about how you feel more secure on a hard floor than you do on a rug, right? And then, kind of progressively going grass, now you feel a little bit less secure. So you can challenge your balance by putting yourself in the higher level or the more difficult level of balance, to challenge. Then there's some other things, right? There's 3 systems that affect your balance, right? Your eyes, your inner ears, and then just your spatial awareness of like, I know that I'm holding my hand in the air now, right? If I close my eyes, I still know it's in the air. If I open my eyes, obviously I can see it. So sometimes it's a matter of challenging those 3 systems. And the easiest way to challenge them is you take one system away and then you can challenge with the others. So there are definitely various things that you can do. As far as exercises go, building core strength is huge as far as balance. There's a program that's on TV. I think PBS airs it, or YouTube. It's called Classical Stretch. And it is a phenomenal program. I use it myself, and I absolutely love it. So that's something, if our listeners are interested in, I would definitely check it out. I think it's Miranda Esmond, I forget her last name, but it's like a Miranda Esmond, 3 names, but Classical Stretch, and that's phenomenal.
But also at the conclusion of our Q&A here, we're going to be doing some of these stretching exercises with Ash again, who instructed us in the beginning. So maybe that's when we can incorporate some of these exercises. And sorry, Josiane.
Sky, if I may just add to build upon what folks were talking about from a falls prevention perspective, one of the benefits under our Medicare Advantage plans at UnitedHealthcare that we offer is a house calls program. And the purpose of the house calls program is never to replace a primary care or any kind of specialist that a member is seeing. But what we do is we send at no cost to the beneficiary a nurse practitioner into the member's home obviously with their consent, scheduled appointment, etc., to do a holistic assessment of the member. More specifically, when newer beneficiaries join our plan, is definitely something that's a target population. And by doing so, one of the things that this nurse practitioner assesses is fall prevention, because falls are the leading cause of fatal and non-fatal injuries in the elderly, which can lead to, unavoidable hospitalizations. So what we obviously want to prevent and keep our seniors in the best health possible. So with that said, the practitioner comes into the home, they'll assess things like such as what Rob was saying, like, a rug. Is the rug ripped? Can someone fall on it? And when people are living in their own home, just the way their table is set up relative to, how they get up to the refrigerator, a lot of times we don't see those risks before us. So this practitioner can help identify those risks, outline them for our Medicare members, and then in addition, if they see that their mobility is imbalanced, they'll order them a cane or walker, or help facilitate referrals to the appropriate providers to get those issues addressed.
Now, one of the things that George and Josiane touched on when it comes to fall prevention now is how your sense of hearing comes into play. And it made me think, if you lose your sense of hearing, do you lose that equilibrium you have in your ears, Dr. Fogel?
Okay, yeah, so I want to touch on what George mentioned, that our vestibular system or a balance system is a combination of a lot of different factors. It's the balance, there could be some neurological things going on, but there's, the vision and there's the inner ear. So hearing imbalance can be related. So many people with hearing loss may have balance issues depending on the cause of the hearing loss. So we do work together closely with some physical therapists as well. And so if an individual is experiencing balance issues, they should definitely have their hearing checked as well, because if there's hearing loss either in both ears or one ear, that can also cause some balance issues, and addressing the hearing can definitely help with the balance. And so, and there are audiologists out there that do balance testing as well.
Thank you. And I wish we did have more time together. I want to take a moment to recognize some of the other winners of some of the other prizes that we had to give away before we turn back over to Ash Straw, who will guide us through some of the stretching exercises. But we have Lorraine from Long Beach, who won a Mia Posto gift card. So congrats, Lorraine. We have Vincent from Oceanside, who won a Krups coffee maker machine. And we have Glenn from Merrick, who won a Ninja blender machine. So to those attendees, you'll be emailed after this event. And look how we're all smiling. So let's take a quick selfie, everyone on screen. Thank you, everyone. And thanks to our panelists and to the guidance and advice that you gave us. And again, this is recorded and it will be posted on the Herald RichnerLIVE website. So please tune into there and share the link with your friends, to anyone who may have missed today. And we really appreciate it. We appreciate our sponsors, and we appreciate the panel, and we appreciate the attendees. So now I'm going to minimize all of us, and we will turn it back over to Ash Straw for those stretching exercises, because maybe we don't want to be seen on screen as we're doing some of these exercises. So goodbye for now, everyone, and turn it over
Thanks,
to Ash.
Guy.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Care.
All right, well, it came up during this conversation, but I'll say it again anyway. Enough cannot be said about the health benefits of movement. Exercise increases the flow of chemicals called endorphins to the brain that lift our mood, and movement through the body encourages important energy streams like circulation, the lymphatic system, to do their jobs in clearing out toxins from the body. One of the major impacts that the coronavirus and quarantine has had on our day-to-day lives is that we've wound up spending most of the day sitting down. Prior to the outbreak of the coronavirus, you may not have been very active, but across the board, the average person is now much less active than they were several months ago. When we sit for long periods of time, our spine begins to round forward and the vertebrae start to compress. It's subtle, but it happens over the course of every day. We begin to microscopically get shorter. During this period of time, when we are sitting down so much, the consequences of that are even more pronounced. The base of our spine, down at the bottom of our spine, is designed to provide support and stability. So it doesn't allow for a lot of movement. Then as we travel up the spine, we have access to more and more motion and different kinds of movement. Now, to close out our experience today, we're going to explore bending and twisting the spine to stimulate different parts of our body and allow you to leave today's event feeling balanced, open, and energized. So if you've stood up over the course of the last hour, I'm going to invite you now to come back to your seat so we can do some of these exercises together. I'm going to take my seat right here. And again, you'll move up forward on your chair so that your spine is away from the back of the chair, and take your feet and plant them firmly down into the ground. Sit up nice and tall and feel the shoulders relaxing away from the ears. Let the arms be loose and heavy. And let's start to make some circles with our nose. So the circles can start out pretty small, and then you can make them bigger and bigger. This starts to get us working in our cervical spine. And if you find that there are areas of discomfort and you want to spend a little bit more time in them, please go ahead. Now let's start to reverse those circles, continuing to move the neck, but in the opposite direction now. Very good, and you can release the circles and come back to center. Now let's take the right ear to the right shoulder, and you might feel a big stretch in the left side just like that. But if you want a little deeper stretch, take the right hand and rest it on top of the head. Now you can see I'm gently, very gently using the hand to encourage my head down. That deepens the stretch. Then I'll take my left fingertips and reach them down toward the ground. Take a deep breath in here. And release. Good. Lift the head. And we'll take the other side. The left ear to the left shoulder now. Get that nice big stretch in the right side. And if you want a little more, take the left hand overhead, encouraging the weight of the head down, and reach the right fingertips now toward the floor. Breathe into the stretch. You can take those same nice deep breaths we took at the beginning, where your exhales are a little bit longer than your inhales. Good, and release the hand, lift the head back to center. Let's take a couple shoulder rolls here. We're going to start to move deeper into the spine, lower down in the spine. We've been up at the top piece of the spine here. We're going to take some cat-cow postures. So what we'll do is we'll press the chest forward, we'll lift the head a little bit, and then on an exhale, we'll round the back. Now you might want to bring your arms up to chest height as you do this. And as you exhale, bring your palms together like in a prayer. Keep moving this way. Inhale, press forward. Exhale, round the spine. Inhale, press forward. Exhale, round the spine. forward. And last time, exhale, round the spine, and you can release the hands. Very good. So we talked a little bit during the panel today about the importance of a strong core. We're just going to do a little bit of subtle movement, again, even further down into the spine. We're going to tuck the tailbone forward and then press it back. And see if you can have that movement come from your belly, from engaging your belly, and then rock back. So pull your core in tight and see if you can tuck the tailbone forward, and then release, let it rock back. One last time, engage the core, tuck the tailbone forward, and then release. Very good. One of the most beneficial movements that we can offer the body is a twist. I talked a little bit about twisting. First, it relieves that pressure and compression along the spine that I mentioned earlier. Then, when we release a twist, our blood rushes to the areas of the body that were contracted before, and it rinses those areas with healthy blood flow. Let's do one of these postures now and see if you can feel the difference in your body. Sitting up nice and tall, inhale, feel the spine extend, and then take your left hand to the outside of your right knee, and you'll reach your right hand to the chair back behind you, whatever you can grab here. As you inhale again, lengthen the spine, lift the chest, and then exhale, twist around, twisting from the lower part of the spine all the way up. Maybe you can look at the wall behind you. Take a few breaths here. Inhale once more, exhale a little deeper, and then release that movement. Pause here at the center. Close your eyes. See if you can notice the difference. Notice everywhere you feel energy moving around in your body. Notice what's opening up. We'll take that same thing to the other side. Inhale, lift and lengthen the spine. Exhale, twisting over to the left. Inhale, lengthen even more, and pressing your knee away, twist even deeper. Take a few breaths here. And then release. There's one last movement practice I'll leave you with as we begin to wrap up today's event. Having your legs and feet dangling down from a chair all day is absolutely terrible for the circulation in your lower legs. So let's lift our legs. First, let's just lift one knee at a time, as high as you can. Don't worry about rocking back in the chair. This is just about stimulating the body and lubricating the joints. Good. Now pick one leg, wrap your fingers around the hamstring, and let's just make some circles with the ankle. No particular direction, and your foot doesn't need to be as high as mine is right now. Anywhere is fine. Release that, and take the other leg and do the same thing. And release that. Whenever you can, throughout the day, lift your feet up, wiggle your toes, and draw circles with your feet. It's so good for your circulation to get your feet above your hip flexors when you're sitting down all day. Now close the eyes. Bring your attention to your breath and just notice how your body feels. Think about how your body felt before you started moving and notice the difference. You can start to open your eyes. Thank you so much for allowing me to share my practice with you today. It's been a total honor.
Thank you so much, Ash, for that great conclusion exercise. And thank you to everyone for participating. And I wanted to reiterate that all registrants for this event who are Medicare and Medicare Advantage plan holders are eligible for the free blood pressure machine, weight scale, and glucometer as part of this new Medicare initiative. And you just have to call 1-800-GET-WELL. And we'll be emailing that around as well with a link to the recording of today in case you wanted to share that with your friends or anyone who may have missed. And I want to share my thank you slide. Thank you to everyone for joining. And thank you to our sponsors. And again, thank you on behalf of the Long Island Herald Community Newspaper Group and RichnerLIVE, which is our live virtual event series like the one today. And please join us next week for Herald Inside LI. On Tuesday evening will be all about breast cancer. And on Wednesday morning will be with some of Nassau County's elected officials. So thank you very much. Visit our website, follow us on social media, and see you next time.